Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you are a junior, this video is for you. We are going to be talking about 8 simple steps that you can be doing in order to help prepare yourself for senior year and the college application process. If you are watching this video as a junior in the fall semester, I would highly encourage you to sign up for the PSAT. Most students actually take it as sophomores. However, if you want to be considered for a National Merit Finalist, which is a really prestigious honor, you need to take it as a junior. Now, even if you don't think you're going to get National Merit recognition, it's still important to take the PSAT because it can help you understand what you need to be doing for the SAT, or even if you're taking the ACT, it could still help you identify your strengths and weaknesses because some of the skills are very similar. And so it would help you get data about yourself. And so a lot of schools offer it during the school day. At my school specifically, juniors have a sign-up sheet and they just get to take it. They miss class for that morning and then they get their results back at the same time the sophomores do. So it can be a really good way to just kind of check in before you take an official SAT or ACT. So the big question that a lot of students ask is, do I need to take the SAT or the ACT? So the answer depends on a few different factors. The ACT has 4 sections, including a science section, which is actually not content knowledge. It's pretty much a bunch of graphs and other things. So if you're very good in science, you might consider taking the ACT. Most students, I feel like, take the SAT. I think it's just a little bit more popular, especially internationally. So depending on where you live, there might be a preference. For instance, in the South, the ACT is more popular. In New England, where I grew up, the SAT was more popular, and to a certain degree, there's not much difference between certain types of questions. So while the preparation process might be slightly different, if you are preparing for the SAT, it's not like it's a total 180 in order to prepare for the ACT. Now, I'm speaking specifically about the English and the reading portions, or on the SAT, they call it writing and language instead of English. But the idea is that you can take the SAT, let's say, a couple times, and then if you want to try the ACT, go ahead. Some students find that they score significantly higher on one test versus the other. Most students, in my opinion, score relatively comparably. So for instance, if you score really high on the ACT, you're probably also going to score pretty high on the SAT. If you score about average on one, you'll be about average on the other. So for the rare but occasional student, sometimes one test yields better results than the other. And so I would look at the essays as well. The essays are optional. If you're a strong writer, I would encourage you to look at it and see if it's something that you think would help you. I feel like the essays don't hurt students. It's just that they're not guaranteed to help you, if that makes sense. So right now, and I say right now because the test has changed a few different times, but basically right now, the SAT essay is a rhetorical analysis essay. So if you are currently in AP language as a junior and you're really good at question 2, then maybe you'll take the SAT essay. It's just an extra 50 minutes. You're already there for quite a while, to be honest. So what's an extra, little bit of time to write that essay, and hopefully it doesn't, I don't want to say it like boost your score because it's like not really factored in. It's just kind of extra, but some schools will look at it. I've even heard of a couple schools using a really strong essay score as a justification for a student not having to take college English 1 and 2. There's other ways to test out of that, but that might be an option. If you want to be an English major, it might prove your writing prowess. For the ACT, the essay is not rhetorical analysis. It's more of an argumentative synthesis type essay. So I would look at some release prompts and release samples before you commit to writing the essay, but I don't think it's anything to be scared of. It's not right for everybody. It's not mandatory for everybody. For some students, it would literally not benefit them at all. So just kind of weigh your options with that. The other thing that students ask all the time is, how many times should I take the SAT or the ACT? And I would say the average student should take it 2 to 3 times. So if you've taken it as a sophomore, then I would take it in the fall semester of your junior year and the spring semester. And then if needed, you could take it over the summer before your senior year. You don't want to be waiting for a senior year test in order to get your desired score. It happens for some students, but I feel like the average student needs to not put that kind of pressure on themselves because you're going to have a lot of other things going on as a senior. So ideally, you will take the SAT or the ACT 2 to 3 times, and beware of registration deadlines. So you might not get your previous test scores back before the deadline to sign up for the next test. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. And if you are struggling financially, I know at our school, there is an option for students to take the ACT, I believe up to 2 times for free if you are on free and reduced lunch. So I would talk to your guidance counselor if you're struggling with that, because in my state, we offer the ACT to juniors for free. And so it's done during the school day. And a lot of students who struggle financially wait for that test because they want to try to do a one and done situation. And while I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, it's also important to know that there might be other opportunities. I would also say that if you're waiting until the spring semester of your junior year, you're definitely going to want to have studied. Some students who take it as sophomores or even in the fall semester of their junior year, it's kind of like a practice run, a trial run, and they don't study. They just want to see how they do. And I agree with that to an extent. I disagree with that to an extent. But by spring semester of your junior year, it's not time to mess around and to just see what happens. You need to actually study. So how do you do this? There are free online materials. The College Board website has a lot of great stuff. Khan Academy has great stuff. YouTube has some great videos. You can even go to the library and check out some ACT or SAT practice books. You might have a friend who has one. So they're kind of expensive. Like they range from $25 to $40. So I wouldn't necessarily go out there and buy every single prep book. In fact, I think some of them are actually really terrible and some of them are quite good. So I would be selective with what I purchase, but I would still try to access free materials, specifically the stuff from the College Board, because there's usually the test itself and then an answer explanation. And so I would study very strategically, look at what you get wrong, work your way backwards and figure it out. And if you're not sure, consult a peer, consult a teacher, consult a tutor, but use the prep materials and the prep time as a diagnostic so that you can do even better when it comes to the real test day, because you don't want to have that pressure of having to take the ACT or the SAT a 4th, 5th, 6th time, something like that. Like you want to get it done in 2 to 3 times if at all possible. The third thing that I recommend that juniors do is update their resumes. So if you don't have a resume in place, or if you just have a bulleted list and it's not a very formal setup, I would start to format your resume a bit more traditionally and make sure that your credentials are accurate. You also want to look at what colleges might think or see when they look at your resume. So do you have really strong volunteer hours, service, commitment to an extracurricular? Do you have 1, maybe 2 to 3 top activities that show that you have a passion for something? So it's less about being involved in 17 different clubs and more about pursuing 1, 2, maybe 3 things that are really meaningful to you. And so now would be the time as a junior to start compiling a more formal resume. There are some resources online. Google has some templates. Canva has some templates. Those might not be the best ones, but they do look nice. I would say sometimes the templates are a bit too flashy with like color and font. That is just a bit much. So sometimes simpler is better, and you don't even need a template to make a good resume, but just have something prepared, because you don't know, like someone actually might ask you for it as a junior, and so you want to have something that is on file ready to go instead of having to cram and put one together. So this next step is the part that is going to scare some of you, but try not to freak out too much. However, junior year is the time to start doing your research and to start making a list of the colleges to which you want to apply. So how do you do your research? There's a few different things you can do. A lot of schools host college fairs where schools come to your school. Colleges come and they set up booths. Sometimes students go to a college fair, so it's at a different venue outside of your school, and it's kind of like a field trip. So either way works, but go around, talk to them, take the brochures, that kind of thing. YouTube is a really great resource because a lot of students who have been accepted to different universities will do dorm room tours or a day in the life kind of thing. So if you can't get out to a certain college because it's out of state, or you just simply don't have a means of going, YouTube could be a really good resource. There are also sometimes presenters that come in. So people from like the Army, National Guard, different colleges will send a representative. And so you can go to their booth. I know at our school, they set up the booth near our cafeteria during lunchtime. Every once in a while, someone will come in during the day and they'll allow students to go talk to them, but usually it's around lunchtime. And so go up to that person and introduce yourself. If they have like a little questionnaire, go ahead and fill it out and give them an email address. I would say not your school email. I would have a personal one instead, and just get whatever kind of free info they have. Sometimes they give little goodies like stress balls and lanyards and stuff, but just keep your options open, especially if you're not sure what you want to study or where you want to go. Just like collect the info and start to think about what you might be interested in and make a list and so forth. If you have your mind set on something, I would still come up with a plan B and a plan C, but start to look at that particular school and what you need to do to set yourself apart. This next step applies to both American students and international students. So if you are applying to a top school, Ivy League or another top tier school, then you might need to consider taking an SAT subject test. You cannot take the subject test on the same day as the SAT. So usually you want to take these at the end of your junior year, specifically after you have taken a particular course. So for instance, if you're taking chemistry your junior year, then you might want to take the SAT subject test for chemistry in June if your classes end in May. So you want to kind of be mindful, especially if you're taking AP exams, to maybe schedule these kinds of things for June. So some schools require subject tests, other schools recommend it, some schools have zero preference. So I would look into what the schools you want to apply to require. Basically, I would say international students, generally speaking, should consider Math 1 or Math 2, and then one of the sciences. If you are really strong in a foreign language, whether you're a native speaker of that language or you've just taken it for several years in high school, you might also consider the subject test for that language. So that would be something else to consider. Now, as far as the foreign language tests themselves, generally speaking, for top colleges, you're going to want to try to shoot for a 100 on the TOEFL and either like a 7.5 or an 8 on the IELTS. So Brown requires an 8, I believe, but most of the other schools, a 7.5 is sufficient. So if you are an international student, you need to either take the TOEFL or the IELTS. The IELTS is British, so some foreign schools are like under the British system, and so you might have already prepared for the IELTS. Other schools are preparing students for the TOEFL. It doesn't necessarily matter which one you take, but you want to make sure you're achieving an appropriate score. If you're an American student, then you probably don't need the TOEFL or the IELTS. So just take those during your junior year. I would say toward the end of your junior year, you can retake the TOEFL, you can retake the IELTS. So if there's a particular month where you're not taking an SAT or an SAT subject test, or if you happen to have an AP test or IB test, if there's one month where you're just kind of free, I know you're not really free as a junior, but I would squeeze the TOEFL or the IELTS in there. So toward the end of junior year, you can take it sooner, but try to do it in a month where you can focus your attention on preparing for that test. So if you are having like some kind of off month in between SAT tests, that would be a good time to take the TOEFL or the IELTS. So as a junior, it's also important to just be aware of your stats. So what is your GPA and what is your class rank? Now, some schools don't release this information, so if your school doesn't do class rank, it's okay. But you want to be aware of these things in case it comes up in the near future for your college application process. If you're going for an honor grad, you want to make sure that you have the right number of honor grad credits and so forth. If you are going to try to be a completer in any particular discipline, like for instance, a business completer, you want to make sure that you've taken the necessary courses, or if you haven't taken them, them that they'll fit into your schedule senior year. If you're interested in being a collegiate athlete, you're going to want to look up the NCAA requirements and make sure that you have taken the classes that you need. Now, most students don't have any problem with this because it's kind of like the basic requirements regardless of your state. So the one thing I have heard students get confused about recently is that they weren't sure that they had some kind of social science credit. Well, their history classes counted, so it was fine. And then I also heard of another student who was trying to see if a class that he took 8th grade year would count, and it did because he got high school credit for it. So if you're interested in collegiate athletics, I would go to the NCAA website and just double check those kinds of things. Be mindful of college requirements. So, for instance, what AP score do you need in order to test out of a certain subject? Or do you need a certain number of foreign language credits at your high school in order to get into a college honors program? Sometimes there are really nitpicky things, especially for some of the top schools. So just kind of look at, like, if you know what your major is, what the recommendations are as far as the classes that one should come in with. Thing to consider as a junior, specifically toward the end of your junior year before your senior year, would be college visits. Now, I understand that not every student can go to every single college, especially if you're looking at out-of-state options. It might not be possible. So if it is possible, I would highly recommend that you go on a visit if it's during the school year. A lot of times high schools will give you 2 excused days to do college tours as long as you provide documentation. So I would maybe ask if you can sit in on a class. Sometimes that's reserved only if you're a senior in high school, like for those students, but see if you can sit in on a class, see if you can eat a meal in the dining hall. A lot of these things are included in the college tour anyway. See if you can talk to a professor, that kind of thing. Like, they're going to be pitching their school to you just as much as you're pitching yourself to them. So see if you like the atmosphere, see if you like the dorms, see if the policies and the environment, see if that jives with what you're looking for. If you go tour during the summer, it's not as busy. And so there are pros and cons to this. And so I would say if you can do a campus tour, go for it. Now, if you can't do a campus tour, like I previously said, YouTube is a great resource for a lot of things. So there obviously are going to be pictures and stuff online, but just kind of see what a day in the life is like if someone has done a YouTube video like that. And I think it's okay not to do a campus visit if that's just simply not an option, but try to decide if you could see yourself going to this college for 4 years. Is it a place where you feel like you could fit in and make it your home? Last thing I recommend is toward the end of your junior year, start to think about a plan of attack for senior year. So you've probably, by the end of your junior year, already registered for next year's classes. You need to start thinking about the college application process. So if you're going to apply early decision or early action, you might need to, at the end of your junior year, ask those teachers, coaches, counselors, whomever is writing your letters of recommendation. You might need to ask them to do so. That way they have the summer to prepare. And that way you are not stressed come, September, October, November. So you want to be thinking about those things. If you're not applying early decision or early action, you might not need to ask the teacher for a letter of recommendation yet, but you might just mention it to them and just say, hey, would you mind? I'll revisit this with you in the fall if you're comfortable with writing it or something like that. You also need to be thinking about your scholarships. Now, that can sound really intimidating because a lot of the scholarships actually have deadlines in the spring, but you need to be thinking about what local scholarships are there. Is there a scholarship through your church? Is there a state scholarship? Are there scholarships from the school that you intend to apply to? Those kinds of things. Do you need a certain ACT or SAT score? Like, do you need to retake it in the fall? And so as much as you need to start thinking about the college application process, you might also need to think about scholarships. Now, you can even start writing your Common App or just your application essays. Maybe do a rough draft of them, some kind of brainstorm. Summer is usually a lot of downtime where maybe the creative juices will be flowing and you can have some inspiration. And I think it can also help students because when you get back to school in the fall, you're going to be doing schoolwork. And so the summer might be a really good time to get a head start on those essays if that is something you choose to do. The last thing I would say is to think about your summer plans. Are you going to do an internship? Are you going to volunteer? Do you need a summer job? Make sure you have something lined up so that you have some kind of meaningful activity during the course of the summer. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope that the tips were helpful, especially if you are a high school junior. It can be a really stressful year, and so sometimes having a checklist to follow makes you feel like you're more in control. So if this video was helpful, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe. And until next time, guys, happy writing.